An important concept in guidance is how we talk to children and in the early childhood setting. And really, arguably, especially this concept, how we talk to children at any age. This is even how I phrase my encouragement to my college students, even within really anybody of any age is, but especially with children for very specific reasons, our words matter. The words we choose in classrooms are very important, and they become one of the dividing factors between guidance versus discipline. And as we have been reading this semester and in this module specifically, guidance is the preferred way to work with children and to address challenging behaviors and to help children develop and learn regarding their social and emotional growth. So, one thing that's driven through this module is that you want to tell children their desired behavior. So, one assignment is reviewing the rules in your classroom or in a classroom where you volunteer. And, and also, not just telling children what the desired behavior is, but then when correcting behavior, giving children alternatives to the undesired behavior, being specific. A lot of times you might say, use your inside voice. If you haven't done lessons and taught children what the phrase inside voice is, a child won't know what that is. Whereas if you say you need to whisper or you need to lower your voice and match my level of volume, that is telling child, that's giving the child a very specific benchmark for what you're wanting. So even the idea of walking feet, well, what does that mean and how does that look? You want to be very careful about what you're using. And so when we use cute phrases, we just have to be careful sometimes that kids really know what those are and that we've taught them exactly what we mean by those terms. Good to use, fun to use, and it's often is part of that creating a loving environment, but just make sure you've given lessons and that children really understand what you mean by those terms. I am the queen of leading statements, but leading statements do not guide. Leading statements and questions give direction. So I know we've all done this. I know we've all watched and heard other adults say you're sorry, give them a hug, hand them the toy. But instead, we need to move away from those kinds of phrases and questions to ones that get children to think through what we've taught them, what they might know intuitively. And sometimes we might find that that child needs more lessons or more instruction, more guidance, but they don't need direction. We want to build the internal motivation and the internal awareness of how to deal with situations. So, guiding children, instead of saying, say you're sorry, say, I see Caroline crying. How can you make her feel better since you hit her? It doesn't let the child argue about why she's crying. It doesn't bring an argument or confrontation about what the child did because you're just stating the fact. This is what you did. What are you going to do about it? It gives the child time to think through how they can solve the problem. It also allows for child's temperament differences. I'll give an example. Caroline is the name of my daughter. She is not an overly touchy kid. For her to give a hug means a lot. That's just her temperament. So how can you make her feel better? She would come up with a dozen ways to do it, but it might not include a hug. And that's okay. So in some ways, also, by asking guiding questions and making kids think about how to solve problems, we are also allowing for them to do it in a way that is respectful of their temperaments and their comfort levels. Looking at children and saying, what could you do differently here? So kids are arguing about how to play together. They're having a play problem. Looking at them and saying, what could you do differently? So not who's right, who's wrong, but instead really coming to the focus of, don't keep doing this the same way. Let's think in a new way. How can we prepare the classroom so that we can go outside? So you're saying the classroom's not ready. It has to be ready. We want to go outside. What do you need to do? Well, the kid needs to pick up their space or throw away their trash or whatever the problem is. You're clearly saying here, we're not ready. The classroom's not ready. We want to go outside. What are you going to do? I really see that you are upset. What can you do to take a minute to calm down? Again, recognizing the emotion or the behavior, clearly stating that something has to be done and what you're wanting. So in this situation, you're wanting them to calm down. The first question, you're wanting the child to make Caroline feel better. So we're saying a lot, but we're also allowing the child who's having the problem, who's having the challenge, to think what to do. Sometimes you'll have kids in situations and at different ages who may not be ready for a very open-ended, how can you make her feel better? And instead, you might need to say, you hit her. You need to make her feel better. We can say, I'm sorry. We can rub her back. We can get her a glass of water. We can tell her, I'm sorry, I lost my temper and I hit you. So you can give the child options, 2 or 3 options of how they might be able to fix that. Same thing with the classroom. How can we prepare the classroom so that we can go outside? Your center is not cleaned up, and centers have to be cleaned up before we can go to the next thing, which is going outside to play. What are we going to do? You've made it very obvious to the child. You're going to pick up the center. Or how can you prepare the classroom so that we can go outside? I see the blocks are not back on the shelf and the mat needs to be rolled up for the basket. So you're asking them, but you're also saying, this is what I see, and giving them 2 specific things to do. So those are how you can really scaffold a child within asking that problem-solving question. Because hopefully the next 2 or 3 times, you may not need to, after 2 or 3 times of scaffold questions, you can back off on the scaffolding and open up the question. These kinds of questions and encouragement over praise, all this open-ended, the words matter because it builds self-regulation. It encourages children to take risks. It encourages competence, so confidence in what they do and also being able to do what you want them to do. And being independent, because it doesn't become about you, the teacher. It becomes about them and how different situations make them feel and how they feel about themselves. That is Montessori education is incredibly intense in encouragement over praise and building this independent feeling within children. And the positive outcome of that is when you talk to upper elementary school age teachers, so 4th, 5th, 6th grade teachers who have Montessori children in their regular classrooms, so children who have come from Montessori backgrounds, they will tell you that child never doesn't know what to do next. And those child always are finding themselves engaged. They don't rely on the teacher. They're very driven themselves. Their level of work then tends to be pretty high because it's just been so ingrained into that child they don't wait for the next direction. They are able to find and figure out what to do next, even if that means waiting or expanding on an activity. Is the idle time just does not seem to be there. So again, praise discusses results, where encouragement notices the effort and the growth. You'll hear the words growth mindset sometimes. Praise uses opinion words: good, great, terrific, wonderful. Well, that's your opinion as a teacher. What you might find is great, I might not say is great. You'll hear that with parents sometimes. Well, she said, good job, Anderson. Well, that didn't look very good to me, all those stringed letters. Being specific, using descriptive words, tells the child what the child did that you're noting, which may be then described as being good or great or terrific or wonderful, but you're being very specific about what they did. And it's also, so praise is typically given when the child performs in a way that's about adult desires, where encouragement takes away the performance and really focuses on what is happening and how it might be different next time, how it might change. It goes beyond just that immediate moment. So it, as encouraged with positive discipline, it teaches self-reliance. The encouragement invites the children to analyze themselves and be critical of themselves. And it avoids that, look at what I did. Do you like this? Do you like that? And instead helps the child build that confidence within themselves. I was talking with a student earlier this week, and we talked about how posters in the classroom are good for teachers more than they are for adults. And this was after a student said that they wanted to work on asking more open-ended questions. And I said, well, one of the things I definitely suggest is hanging reminders in the classroom. And so here I just Googled and found this free printable, and I'll actually share this within the announcement with this short lecture, of phrases. Now, notice here, these are all not that great. So you may even want to come up with your own, because good job, way to go, great helper, those are those opinionated kinds of statements. But instead of you're a great helper, instead you can say, you are cleaning up your center and you're helping Sally clean her center up. Thank you so much for helping us get outside faster. It's a little different. So these encourage, you've got to be careful when you print stuff, because I didn't obviously look at this close enough. But I'm going to keep it in the lecture because I think it's a really good example of being careful. But one thing I particularly like in this is that it says, let's tell Daddy what you did. You are so creative. You're improving. You are very strong. Look what you did. That puts it on the child to think, well, what did I do? What's she pointing out here? And that creates a conversation. I also think it's interesting that they added these, you do that as well as mommy, you're just like daddy. Imagine if you looked at a teacher at a child, building a castle, and you said, you built a better castle than I could have ever thought of. Now I used a judgment word in there, better. But at the same time, I elevated that child above me. I gave them encouragement in a way that helps them develop this sense of, even though I'm small, even though I'm a kid, I can do things that are just as awesome as adults. I have a special gift. I have a special power. My husband and I started watching a movie on Amazon last night called Troop Zero. And they keep saying everybody's got a power. Everybody has something special in this troop of kind of misfits. And a very cute story about a set of children dealing with a very mean set of children and mean adults. But a lot of fun lessons in there, and the whole everybody's got a power, and how they encourage each other. They don't do it for each other, and they have to work together. It's a very awesome story, very fun. So I'm going to give a link to this poster, and I'm going to find a better poster to share so you can print them if you want for your own classroom as you think about the use of your own words that you use with children and helping them think and problem solve, and also develop a lot of those internal motivations rather than being dependent upon the adult or others and their opinion.